Today's guest is Omar Shaya. I met Omar when he was a student at Stanford in my class. Omar, I believe, represents the best and the potential of the United States. Omar is from Syria. He has worked in a variety of countries and in a variety of companies, and he has now got a artificial intelligence startup, which I'm going to ask him to tell us about. So welcome to the Pfeffer on Power podcast, Omar. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Professor. It's a privilege to be with you and to have had the chance to be in your class as well. I learned so much, so many valuable lessons that I've been applying every day since.
For those people who don't know you as well as I do, give us a little kind of personal history. Tell me about your origins and where you lived and the companies you worked for and how you found yourself at Stanford, and then we'll talk about the startup.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, I'm from Syria. I was born in Syria. Although my mom is Venezuelan, she's South American. So I have quite a mixed background. And after I finished high school, I moved to Germany on a scholarship from the European Union to study computer science in Germany. I stayed there. I did my undergrad and master's in computer science. And that's where also I was focused on AI already. I joined a startup that was founded by Stanford graduates and then was acquired after 2 years. And then I joined Microsoft in London, where I was working on the Microsoft Copilot team, used to be called the Microsoft AI Assistant team, where we worked on AI applications for personal productivity and building these types of personal AI assistants that can do things for you. And so that was kind of the seed for eventually what became my startup later. In between, I also worked at Meta, or formerly known as Facebook, working on personalization algorithms, basically the algorithms that show you the most relevant content to you out of millions and millions of options. And I've always wanted to start a company inspired by the United States and specifically Silicon Valley, and seeing all these entrepreneurs start amazing companies and build technology that reached me, in a far away place in Syria. So I was inspired by American entrepreneurship since I was a little kid, and I think that was the inspiration to pursue it and eventually end up here. In what I believe is actually the best place on earth, especially if you're into technology and entrepreneurship. And one of the ways to move to the US was going through grad school, and so that was one of the motivations to go to Stanford. And of course, it's a great school. Given my technical background, I wanted to gain a bit more of a business education. And so that's how I ended up at Stanford and started the company while I was there.
And tell us a little bit about the company that you started. We might as well use this as an opportunity to advertise your company, which has raised quite a bit of money and is valued, I believe, now at about $100 million, and has got enormous amount of traction, has built a very successful and comprehensive ecosystem. Tell us about the company. And I was particularly impressed when we had dinner together in your kind of rationale for starting the company, this issue of democratization.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always believe that technology has been like a democratizing factor. So democratized access to information through Google and other search engines, democratized access to even like a private driver through Uber and so on and so forth. So technology always came and democratized access to something that was before that was very exclusive to only people who could afford it. And one of the things that I noticed are still exclusive is having access to a personal assistant or to an executive assistant, someone or something that you can delegate tasks to, tasks that you do not want necessarily to do, but you have to do, so that you can stay focused on the things that you actually want to do. And so when I looked at that, I noticed that this is very limited to people who can afford it, or wealthy or executive. but the rest of the population did not have access to this. And I thought AI could be the democratizing factor here, where you could give every single person on earth an assistant that can help them be more productive, that can let them delegate tasks that they do not want to do but yet have to do, so that they can stay focused on the things they care about most. So that was the motivation to start this company. And I had the privilege to work on similar things before in my career at Microsoft and then at Meta. So that gave me also the experience and background to be able to build this and have the technical expertise and knowledge to do it.
Thank you for that. And my sense is that your company has been quite successful in building a lot of important relationships, for instance, with Amazon, among others, but many other companies. What do you think has been the key to success in getting so many, and obviously getting important venture backing, including from our friends at Blitzscaling Ventures, and you were kind enough to permit me to make a small investment in your company. But what do you think has been the key to getting so many partners and people to be part of your ecosystem?
I think it's a combination of factors that make up this ecosystem. And I think the first was starting from the team. I think we have an excellent team. A team, they call it like a team market fit or founder market fit, where we have the exact right background to build this. So it's not just some random person who decided to come up with an idea and just pursue it, which also is very possible. But I think in our case, we have been doing this for a long time, building AI, building autonomous systems, and thinking about these problems for a while. And so I think many people and organizations trust that we are the right team to build this technology and build this product, given our background and how we've been doing this way before it became kind of hype or cool, the way AI is today. So that was number one. And number two, we were actually one of the few ones who put an actual product on the market that anyone can see, anyone can use, versus we see many others who claim to have something, but you've never seen it and no one else have seen it. Actually, this is a common question that comes up, for example, when I was talking to investors, they ask us, oh, what about this competitor or that competitor? And, we have a simple answer. It's like, show us the competing product. The fact that they say they're working on something doesn't really mean that they did it. And so I think that's the other factor, is that we were about show, don't tell. So we were showing people what we've built and putting it in their hands and showing it. I think you were at the LP meeting of the fund when we demoed the product, and I demoed it live, and I asked it to go buy the book that Chris Ye wrote, and it went on its own, and it bought it live in front of everyone. And then I asked it to go and cancel the order, to which he said, oh, no, please, it will hurt the numbers. And so, but still also ask it to cancel the order. It went and canceled the order live in front of everyone. And so this was another factor where we showed people what is possible, and we actually built it, unlike many others. And so these two, I think, are kind of hard facts. In addition to that, I think maybe we can already start talking about lessons from your class and your book, because
thank you, because that was going to be the next question. Next question I was going to ask was, I hardly use a cell phone. I am probably the least technical human being that I know or on the planet, and so the idea that my class would have been helpful to you in building this company would strike at least some of my friends as completely incongruous. But you and your friend Renee Cassie, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and for that matter, some other guests who you know. And Renee, but in particular, has said that I've been extraordinarily helpful to him. So I must be helpful in ways I don't even appreciate. So why don't you tell people how you have used some of the ideas from the class and from the book as you have built your company?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a long list. I think it will take us much longer than we have time for. But I will try to pick, maybe go over the 7 rules. Maybe that's a good framework to to remember them. But I would say like, as you say, the number one is get out of your own way, and it's absolutely, if you don't get out of your own way, all the other rules do not apply. And so just believing in yourself and in what you can do.
Did you suffer from any imposter syndrome or any reluctance to lean into to your competency and to your skills?
So I think on one hand, I was hyper focused on the company during my time at Stanford, which was very helpful, and I believed I can do it. But there were many factors. I was new in the United States, so I had to get used to a new place, get used to exactly how business is done in this place, get to know people in that place. And I think the main thing that where this rule applies to me is, when you start talking to investors, you start hearing no, 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 no after no after no. And maybe initially you might take it personally because it's your work, and you're getting all these no's, and but getting out of your own way in this case means not take rejection personally.
Yep.
It's just part of the process, and treat it as just another data point. It's like, okay, there is no match with this investor, or maybe I did not pitch it the right way, or did not convey the story the right way. And in addition, I reframed all these types of meetings with investors into an opportunity to practice and perfect the pitch, and even just get to know someone new who might be interesting or whom I can learn something from. And so this reframing is what I would categorize under get out of your own way, and stop taking it personally. Instead, see any rejection or a no as just a data point. And I think that's just one of so many lessons.
Yeah, no, that's a very good lesson. As you know, when Jason Calacanis, who's quite famous as an angel investor, and wrote a book, in fact, called Angel, which talks about how he turned a $100,000 investment in Uber into $100 million. He will talk to you. He says to the class, as an investor, you don't have to be the largest check. You need to be the first. And he talks about how the people at Airbnb got turned down by, 40, 50, maybe 80. I don't even remember the large number of people. He talks about how the night that he made his investment into Uber with Travis Kalanick was at some poker game in which there were 7 people pitching and 7 investors, and 10 people pitching and 10 investors, and 7 people passed on Uber, and he's one of the 3 who invested. So you are certainly right about the importance of not taking rejection personally and being persistent and resilient. I think that's an extraordinarily important lesson. Okay, what other lessons did you take from the class?
I think the other lesson that really worked for us is the thing about building your own brand, because being recognized as an industry leader doesn't just come out of nowhere. You have to get out there, be visible, put yourself in the right place at the right time where people can see you and know about you. And I think our investors usually tell us we punch above our weight, because I can give you an example. There is the number one AI conference in the world. It happened in New Orleans last year. And that conference had sponsors, and there was a category called bronze sponsors. And in that category, it was OpenAI. So, you had platinum sponsor, gold sponsor, bronze sponsor, and the bronze sponsor was OpenAI. So I called up the conference organizers and I was like, hey, I just want to ask, like, how much does it cost to be a bronze sponsor? And they said, oh, $10,000. I was like, okay, I'm wiring $10,000 now. Can we be a sponsor? And so all the tens of thousands of people, top AI researchers in the world who went to this conference. So MultiOn, this small startup next to OpenAI, in the same category as sponsors of this conference. And so this is kind of one example of building your own brand and being recognized in the industry and being proactive about doing so.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fabulous example. It's a really an excellent example of your punching above your weight and building a brand. And what other lessons besides building a brand? I think one of the other things that struck me when I listened to you talk about your thing was your ability to build a network of relationships, to build an ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you call it network relentlessly, and absolutely, that has been super, super, super important for anything you want to do in life, not only starting a company. And I learned to first enjoy this. Initially, I was a bit more on the introverted side, more of a technical person. But slowly, especially after I moved to Stanford, I started enjoying this. And, it's a place that offers incredible, like, everybody comes to Stanford. So whether it's the guests in your class or all the people who come on campus or just Silicon Valley as a whole. And I can give you a very interesting example here where I was in the airport in Vegas coming back from a conference, and I see the founder of the number one consumer health company. It's a company that is valued at $3 billion. He's very famous as a consumer founder and also in the health sector. And I've been an admirer of his product for a long time. They also do use AI in their product. And so I just walked to him in the airport out of nowhere, and I started talking to him and immediately showed him what we're doing. I opened my phone, showed him an example of what we're doing, and we started talking and exchanged emails. And then I followed up on that. And a few months later, he became an official advisor on our board of advisors and made some very, very key introductions to us, whether to investors, and gave our startup a lot of credibility because someone at his level and his success picking us, he could have picked any other startup to advise, but picking us and agreeing to be also public about it, and was a great for our company. And so that's just one example, and we have many others. We have the chief scientist of Google, Jeff Dean, as an investor in the company personally. When we had this blitzscaling dinner, I made sure I sit next to Reid Hoffman all 4 hours of the dinner, and that was a very strategic choice that took a lot of planning to be able to take that seat out of maybe 30 other people. And so absolutely. And I think networking to me is about building relationships, and that's how you start getting energy from networking versus seeing it just as a transactional act. But actually being curious about the other person and learning about them and seeing how you can help each other, and trying to build some sort of a relationship, whether it's a friendship or a business relationship or just a human connection. I think that's how you turn networking from something maybe you don't like into something you might enjoy and get energy from.
Yeah, that's a fabulous example. And the other thing I wanted to talk to you briefly about is when you presented at the Blitzscaling LP meeting, one of the things that struck me is that you showed up with with confidence and with power. You act and speak with power. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I suspect, I mean, you're not talking in your native language, which was, I mean, you're from Syria, and then you lived in Germany, but you show up with an enormous amount of confidence and assurance.
This is also something I learned from your class, and also doubling down on this whole concept of acting with power. And the way I see it, it's not about me acting with power for the sake of myself only, but it is a service to the audience. If I speak with confidence, if they can hear me well, if they can follow the ideas I'm talking about, if they can really understand what I'm saying, I see that as my responsibility towards the audience, and not only about me asserting a certain power or something like that. And so that was also kind of the framing of what it means to show up with power or acting with power to me. And it's definitely a lesson that, you articulated it really well in your class, showed us some practical examples where we actually acted with power and saw the difference. And it's really, acting is not something that you're trying to do to deceive people, but it's a role that you have to fulfill and live up to. And so that's how I see it. And so I see it as a responsibility, and part of the job is to show up this way, and show up this way for our team, to our investors, to any audience and customers.
Yeah, of course. I mean, as the founder and CEO of the company, that's exactly right. You have a responsibility, not just to the audience, as you've articulated it well, but you obviously have a responsibility to your investors and to your team to put the most positive and best face forward for MultiOn, so that people will appreciate what you're doing, the uniqueness of what you're doing, and whatever. I particularly also love the story about, many people show up with a deck. You actually show up with a product, which makes a huge difference. And one other final question I will ask you, if we have a couple of minutes left, which is how you were able to build this, I think, it's a financially significant, it's also, I think, a signaling significant relationship with Amazon. Amazon, as you know, has a multifaceted reputation. In terms of, many people are worried about them stealing content. This has certainly been true in Amazon Marketplace, where there's been a whole controversy about whether or not they figure out what sells and then go make it themselves, et cetera. But, Amazon has had a number of actually run-ins with the European Competition Commission and many other things. But I think you've done a very good job of building an interesting relationship with Amazon, which is not easy to do. So a lot of credit for you for doing that. Do you have any thoughts or lessons about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to start by saying that it has been really a great relationship. They have been a great partners to us. I had access to the senior executives at Amazon who report directly to the CEO through our Amazon investors, and we had direct relationships with many engineering and product teams internally. So it has been great partnership. So we've only seen many good things from that. And I think from day one, we appreciated the value of this partnership and what it could mean for us, and also for Amazon as a company, because we also have something that they want. We have a unique product, unique technology that could also enhance many of their offerings. And so we always looked for the synergies that we could have, whether it's on the infrastructure side, because Amazon has this Amazon Web Services where you can host your infrastructure. They also have different AI teams that we could collaborate with. So beyond just their investment in us, we tried to build a really close relationship. And one funny thing is when the first time they introduced me to their head of devices, who reports directly to the CEO, he happens to be the same person who used to be head of devices at Microsoft. And he happens to be a very close friends with my former boss at Microsoft, who's a VP there. And so, the first thing I do is try to, find these similarities, which is like we have this person in common. And I happened to message this person just before my meeting, and I told him, hey, I want to mention that I know you to this leader at Amazon. And he said, oh, of course, ask him when are we going to go play golf. And so that's the first thing I said in the meeting. And so it immediately built some connection with this executive. And he eventually, at the end of the meeting, he said, I have to attend many of these meetings, meaning with like these types of Amazon investments. But this one was really worth it. And so we ended up with like a really valuable 30 minutes. And once we got the buy-in from the top executive who reports directly to the CEO, the rest just flows.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important lesson. I mean, it's something that we teach in the class about the importance of similarity as a basis of interpersonal connection. And what you did, to find what you had in common and the relationships in common, I think really is effective. And many people don't think about, I want to meet with Omar. What do we have in common? Who do we know in common? And how can we use that mutual connection to build credibility and trust? And I think you did that extraordinarily effectively. Okay, so I will ask you one final question, which is, are there any other lessons that we have not covered that you think you've used in building MultiOn?
I mean, there are a couple of lessons I will just mention quickly. Sure. One is, on the theme of acting with power, the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, used to say that the definition of leaders is leaders create clarity, bring energy, and drive success. And so this bring energy is such an important factor, especially when you're working with a team or even with investors or customers. And I think that's, to me, is part of acting with power, is that you bring energy to the room. You're not the person who's like, sucking the energy out of the room. And so I always try to think of ways of how can I bring energy to any room? How can I make the room more interesting to everyone by being there? So I think that was an important lesson. And I would say that the final lesson, which is break the rules. And I have to say, I did not break any rules except the rules that are just come from when people say, oh, it's always done this way, right? So it's also, especially when we were raising our first round, it was like, oh, you always do it this way. You find a lead investor, you raise at a certain valuation, and so on. And so we kind of rethought the way of how you raise, and we were like, okay, why do I need a lead investor to raise anything? Why do I need to set a fixed valuation from day one? Why do I? And so by questioning the rules, especially the things that people say, oh, this is how it's always done. Questioning these things always led to positive outcomes for us. And so I cannot go into details, but I would say breaking the rules sometimes also is worth it, as long as you're not doing something unethical or illegal.
Yeah, well, I think breaking the rules oftentimes is exactly as you defined it. It's breaking with conventional wisdom. I mean, if you think about all the progress of the African Americans in the United States came from breaking with a conventional wisdom that said that blacks had to sit in the back of the bus and they couldn't vote and they couldn't do this and they couldn't do that. And, and there was certainly ideas that, immigrants from Syria can't, start, high-tech companies or whatever. I mean, there's a set of taken for granted assumptions about how companies need to look and how people need to look and what people need to do. And I think your idea of questioning, of asking why, where did this conventional wisdom come from? And is it actually right? I think is extraordinarily sensible. So Omar, thank you so much. for being on the Pfeffer on Power podcast.
Thank you so much, Professor. It's been great to be with you.